Hi, I'm Jason Hewlett, and the best advice I've ever received is from my mother when she said, "The light you shine is the light you receive."
Ooh, yeah, that's great advice, man. Your mom is really smart, Jason. That's really good advice, right? So give your light as much as you can, and you will be a light to others and get light back. I love that. That's really cool. When did your mom say that, man?
When I was a little kid, after I came home from school and everyone was making fun of me for my big mouth, and I didn't feel so good about myself, and she said, "Honey, you are a little bit different. That's true, but don't go like go like this and smile instead. And the light you shine is the light you receive."
Wow. That's so beautiful, man. That's so beautiful. So Jason, you've done a lot of cool stuff, man, over the years, but I have to tell you, and I've enjoyed watching it all as your friend and as a fan as well. But I have to tell you, this book is fantastic. The Promise to the One is really powerful, man. I listened to it for the second time. I finished it this morning. It is so awesome. And what I love, because I have to tell you, when I first saw this, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a spiritual book. And it kind of was, and I'm going to ask some questions about that because I thought that was interesting. But by spiritual, I think you really took it internal and you took it inside our hearts, and you made us be more spirited. So first, congratulations on a great book, brother. It's really great.
Thanks so much. I can't believe that you would take so much time to read it. And yeah, the spiritual, I think people are confused so much in our culture between spiritual and religious. And it's not a religious book, it's very much a spiritual book about your own faith, about your own foundation, about your own space, and how to really stand on that and keep your promise.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, the book is The Promise to the One. And it's interesting because, like I said, I mean, I was expecting it to be more like, oh, yeah, promise to God or spirit, but it's really promise to yourself, which I really love, right? It's the promise to ourself because everyone's been hurt by these broken promises, especially ourselves. And I think what's really interesting to me is you talk about how the promise is really the highest level of engagement because I'm a goal setter. I mean, 15 years ago, I wrote a book a lot about goal setting. And I remember Steven Shapiro wrote Goal Free Living. And that's actually how he and I connected. And now you've taken it up a whole nother level. So talk to us. What is the promise to the one?
Yeah, the promise to the one is more about the promise to yourself. We set promises or make promises with our bosses and our work and the family and the people that we work with. And then who's left? It's really ourselves. And so are we making and keeping great promises to ourselves, or are we making them and then breaking them? And then we don't know where our integrity is for ourselves as a human being. And so, how can we have more joy in life? Feel happier about what we're doing, feel like we're headed towards our correct purpose and our calling, let's say, it's by making and keeping a great promise or smaller promises that are doable every single day. So that's why it's called the promise to the one. It's not just anybody else, it's yourself. And when we keep promises to ourselves, we'll be that much better with every client, with every interaction, with every engagement, because we know, hey, that's the kind of person I am. I'm going to keep that with you. And it makes us easier to work with, live with, be around. And and a promise is just a wonderful thing that we can make and keep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that promise, that integrity, right? The integrity being wholeness, right? Not morality, not ethics, but integrity meaning wholeness and stay in there, I think is super, super important. And one of the things that I admire the most about you is your level of integrity and commitment to a family friendly show. And in your history, right, you gave up something really big that most people I would imagine and I'm sure you were tempted too, but most people I don't think would give that up. So talk to us about your Vegas missed opportunity, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I was offered a great opportunity to be a headliner in Las Vegas and to have my own show and also in other cities and so forth. But when it came right down to it, as my wife and I were looking at the contract, this was in 2004, so a long time back, at the beginning of my career, all of a sudden we realized this was contrary to what would be congruent with my promise to be a family friendly entertainer. And it was obviously the casino needed to keep a promise to their client, which we understood. They couldn't compromise. And I wasn't about to compromise something that I had stood for so long. And Phil, this hasn't been a story that I've shared that long. It's only been a few years. About maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was working with a speech coach, and she said, Why are you so intent and insistent on doing only clean material? What happened to you in the past? And Phil, I had essentially just forgotten and never told the story of the casino until that speech coach pointed it out and said, "You have got to share that story. That's like a defining moment of your career and why you're on the path you're on. That's a story of integrity and character that most people probably would be surprised to hear." And so that's why it now starts the book, because it really was a seminal moment.
Yeah. And it's so in line with who you are, Jason. You are so always in integrity with your friends, with your family, with things that you do. And it's always interesting to think back to that. Because to your point, right? I didn't know that about you when I first met you. You hadn't shared that much. And then I read that. And honestly, while I was surprised, I wasn't surprised for you. And by that, I mean, I'm surprised because anybody that turns down a massive opportunity, it's like, wow, why did that happen? Why would you do that? And then as I know you, I'm like, well, of course he did. No kidding, right? Like that surprises me not at all. And then right then let's fast forward to kind of like last year or the year before, this amazing story about you cheating on your wife. Let's talk about that one, man. That's a great story too.
Well, yeah, that was some clickbait that I didn't even realize I'd created on Facebook. You know?
I know.
That was December of 2015 even. I mean, that's how
Shut
long
up.
ago
That
this
was
was.
5 years ago. Holy
I know.
cow.
I know, and it was bizarre that this thing went so on fire. But you were there, you remember.
Yeah,
I just write whatever I write, and it's very comical, but it's also very vulnerable. So I open myself up to just be slayed or loved, and I, have kind of lived in a way that I don't care. I just keep sharing and going because my promise is to spread joy, to share light. And so I typed this thing that I said, I think the line was like, "I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I think I cheated on my wife today with my wife. Let me explain." And so I talk about how I was at Target shopping for some manly things, some beard trimmers, sardines, the beef jerky, that kind of stuff. And I saw the quickest line to check out, and there was only two people in the line, and I raced up there. It was a blonde and brunette, and I looked up, saw the blonde, and in a split second I went, "Whoa." Like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and in that split second, then I realized it was my wife. I didn't even know she was at the store. We had come in separate cars. I was on my way to the airport. She was on her way home. She didn't even notice me, and didn't even look at me. And I was pretending like, what should I do? I tried to text her like, "Hey, sexy mama, I'm right here," and she didn't even see it. She was digging through her coupons and focused on the transaction at the checkout there. And so I find it fascinating that literally the whole world loved this story, but it started because it seemed like an indiscretion by me saying I cheated on my wife, and then it turned into a love story about seeing the person that we love the most with fresh eyes and the light that they are in our lives. And it just spread like wildfire around the world. It was the number one. It was the number one story on news stations. I mean, it was like when Kardashians had a baby. I was the number one name on Twitter, on Facebook. It was so weird for like 48 hours, and then I just faded into obscurity.
Right. Yeah. Obscurity. Sure, Jason. Yeah. But no, I remember that, man. Like I messaged you right away. I'm like, dude, this is really good. This is a good story. And I was like, and I can't believe it's 5 years ago. But second, I can't believe how viral it went. I mean, 100 million people saw that. And it's so interesting. Had you not kept your promise there to your wife, to yourself, to the world, and been so vulnerable. I mean, yes, you were cheeky, but you're really vulnerable, man. Like I could totally see you thinking like, "Oh, geez, wow, that was pretty something." And yep, thankfully that was my sweetheart. But holy crap, right? Like what's going on? So I think, that's a perfect example of keeping your promise and being there. And 100 million people, but not everybody loved it. Let's be really clear. There was certainly a small section of people, probably bigger than we'd like, maybe a million out of 100 million, who were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, that's terrible." Or, "Hey, you just bait and switched me, dude. What's up with that?" Right? Or, "Hey, I'm really jealous, man. I wish I was that much in love with my wife." And I think all those things are real and vulnerable, and certainly promises that we need to keep to others. So, Jason, what does your wife think about that story, though? What did she think, and what does she still think? Does she even think about it? She moved on to other crazy stuff you've done.
Yeah, so the main critique I got from the trolls was, hey, if you're so, full of integrity and checking out other women and posting about how, hot they are, what's your problem, And I get where they're coming from. And really where I come from is that I've always walked around and I've looked at everybody and said hi to everybody and complimented everybody. I feel like I'm a full-time cheerleader. Like that's big something in my life that I'm like, and that's like you, Phil. You and I connect so well because we are like the people's champion. And so when my wife saw that people were trolling it, well, actually, first she saw the story about maybe 70 hours into it when my brother shared it with her, and he's like, "Did you see that this is going crazy?" Maybe it wasn't that late, but she was like, "Oh my gosh, what did you write?" So she's never on social media essentially. So then now we're getting calls from the Today Show and from all these places going, "Hey, you're on the cover of this news article," and we're like, "What's going on?" Her response to it was, "Hey, you know what? This is how my husband is. He compliments people. He sees the best in everybody. This is just what he does and what he is. And if you're not used to a man being like that, then I'm sorry you don't know somebody like that. But that's how he is, and that's how he's always been, and I love him for that." So she really had my back because, man, it was way more than a million people. Like, many millions came after me. I was
Yeah.
like the most beloved, to women. Women were like, "Oh, I wish my husband was that way." And then the men were like, "Let's kill him."
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad. But yeah, that's so good. And to that point, for you to not be that way though would be breaking a promise, because I absolutely see that in you, right? You are really good that way, and you've always been someone who looks for that good in others. But that promise of self-acceptance that you talk about in the book is really tough, man. So many of us struggle with that, right? Of doing what you'd say you would do just for you. And you have a line in the book, and you actually commented back on my Insta story about this, because I've bookmarked a piece and you talked about this cannon that we have that kind of, shoots through, and then all of our other gifts are hidden. So talk to us about that, because that was honestly, out of all the stuff that I heard, and I would tell people, if you're thinking about getting the Promise to One, get it on audio, because Jason reads it. And really, he doesn't even read it, he performs it. It's phenomenal. So Jason, talk to us about that little piece there, the promise of self-acceptance, and how sometimes we hide all of our other gifts except for one.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, the Audible is fun because it is a performance. And so I get to do voices and sounds and whatever, and that makes more fun. But when it comes to our signature moves, is what I call it, and discovering those things which make us stand out in this world. It's our gifts, our talents, our strengths, our skills, that which we want to become and create of ourselves. Oftentimes we go in with like this one canon to say, "This is my thing, this is who I am." And as a kid, I went in with, "I am funny," So I blasted through to make friends as the funny guy. And I remember the first time going to a new school where I was trying to be the funny guy, but there was already another funny guy. And then it was like, well, now I'm not sure which guy I get to be, because that guy's funnier, or at least accepted as funnier by the people there. And so then it was like, do I just curl back and hide because I'm not the funny guy with this other guy there? And it shifted the way that I saw my life and the way that I could be. And I realized that if he's funny guy, I have more going on for me, don't I? I mean, I could share maybe complimenting people, or maybe I'm the artist that draws people. It was just a way to try to figure out how could I be connecting with someone, just even when I was a kid in school. And what happens to us in work, on social media and other things, we like blast the world with that one thing that we feel is ours, our signature move, and it very well may be. But that doesn't mean that you only have one signature move. You have plenty of other options, talents, gifts, skills that you can utilize and bring forth. And so now if I bring funny, then that's cool. But then if I also bring vulnerability, or complimenting people, or hey, I'm also an artist, I can do music, or I can sing, I can make people smile with this. Now the next thing I know is I'm sharing more of who I am, and it becomes this huge breadth of all these signature moves that make me significant that I can share with everybody and keep the promise.
Yeah. And I like that. I think the difference, you're almost like a flower gun instead of a cannon,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really cool, right? Because to that point, I've been that way too. Sometimes like, hey, no, that's my niche. And then I'm like, well, hold on. It's the whole thing that makes me up. It's not just this one talent of, wearing glasses. I mean, that's really all I got. But I mean, the rest of the world, right, has other talents. So with that, right, I think that's super, super powerful. But how do we actually keep some of these promises, Jason? I mean, you are really strong on the whole daily journal. So take us through how that works and how you actually, have your prayer of gratitude that you give every day instead of just, oh yeah, here's all my faults. And look at me, I got a wiggly nose or whatever that is. So talk to us about how you actually keep some of these promises, bro.
Yeah, we talk about journaling and the importance of writing in a journal. I take you through a guide that's actually linked to a secret page on my website when you buy the book. And it's pretty powerful for people that have never done much journaling. And so really it's just about, the best ways to journal, maybe just some prompts as far as, writing down what's happened or what your plan is, setting your goals, and then making your promises. And so really, Nietzsche said that, the problem with making a promise is that we forget that we made it. And so when we're making these promises, we just forget all day that we did that, unless we have it somewhere pronounced in our lives until it becomes intrinsically ours, that we live as a part of our DNA every day. For example, if you have a goal, let's say, of, wanting to be healthier, be happier. Let's say it's to work out or to go on a walk every day. That doesn't mean you can wake up and make the choice to go on the walk every morning, because it's probably not going to happen. You're going to check your email, you're going to see social media, the news is going to light on fire, and all of a sudden your day is shot because you're chasing down everybody's needs. Now your walk is gone from the day. I mean, I'm just talking from personal experience. And so if rather we make a promise to say to ourselves, I'm not going to check the phone first thing in the morning. I am going to wake up, get ready, put my shoes on, and go for the walk. And on the walk, then I'm keeping the promise to myself. That's all something I've done that's become my promise to myself every day. And that shifts only when we are willing to write down in our journal what we're going to become, what we're going to change in our life day to day. And then you have the accountability of looking back in the journal and reading, did I do it? How did it go? How did I feel? How do I feel about myself? Am I happier when I'm doing that? And I know, Phil, when I do my daily workout, I mean, hey man, I because of the time of this today, I questioned last night. I said, I wonder if I'll have time to go do my walk if I want to be on time with Phil. And then I thought, well, why don't I just go to bed earlier and wake up a little earlier? So then I keep my promise to myself. I keep my promise to be here. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Wow. It's not that complicated, but it certainly isn't easy. That's something that is very, very true. And you talk about that, right? We all make those excuses. Yeah, I wonder if, I got a trade-off. But yeah, to your point, right? What if I go to bed a little bit earlier? Because we feel better when we keep our promises, and we feel better when we exercise, and we feel better when we're in integrity with ourselves, which I think is really kind of the whole method of the book here, is all about, kind of feeling better about ourselves by having that, and having that gratitude for what we have, having that gratitude for what we have. And one of the things that I'm grateful for now that I live in Florida is I don't have snow anymore. But you talk about property line living and the power of snow removal. I have to tell you, of all the things that you wrote in the book, that's the one that made me laugh the most, because I'm from Wisconsin. And I know that when I lived in downtown Milwaukee, there was a lot of property line living going on. So talk to us about that, Jason, and how that plays out for you, because I think that's one of the funniest things I've heard you say, man.
I don't know if my old neighbors or current ones will ever read the book, but if they do, they'll have to laugh out loud because property line living is if you live in a place where it snows, you wake up and you walk outside with your shovel and your hat and your gloves and you look to the left and you look to the right and you see that the sidewalk in front of your house is covered in snow, but the sidewalk in front of the neighbor's house is not. And it always has made me laugh, like to myself, like what is so difficult if they did theirs and they did theirs that they couldn't have just gone. It's not like it's 19 feet of snow. It might be like 3 inches and just swoop it off. And so I came up with property line living as a way to say, how can I keep a promise to myself that even my neighbors may not notice? Because oftentimes I'll come out early enough that the snow just covers everyone's property. So I just go out there, put on a good old podcast by Phil Gerbyshak, and I just start shoveling, and I'm like, I love to shovel my neighbor's yard and lawn, and I'll do whatever I have to do the driveway, the sidewalk, if I have time. Then there are the days when I don't have time, and that's what I figure. Well, my neighbors must not have had time. They were in a rush. They maybe have a challenge. They couldn't help me. I'm going to help them any chance I get. And that becomes a promise to myself. And I've done this now for 15 years that we've lived in the same house. And only one time has one of the neighbors said, hey, that's sure nice of you to do that. Even though it was like 30 times per winter for like a decade. They're like, hey, I saw you did that. Like it just magically melts through the day.
Yeah, what, you called it what, the snow removal fairies that remove your neighbor's lawn? That just makes me laugh, man, because you see that all the time. And I love though that you shift that in your own brain, even though you know it's not true, that your neighbors are busy and they're doing other stuff, right? But I think if we perceive it that way, eventually it becomes that way, at least for us, and at least we have less resentment. And I think that's, the power of that perceiving, right? The power of our promise and keeping that, of being happy, right? We can choose to be happy. We can choose that to listen to our favorite podcast. We can do that to listen to our favorite music, or in my case, right, our favorite audiobook, though I was doing that working out. Thankfully, no more shoveled snow. So yeah, listen to the promise of the one this week. So really, really good. Really, really awesome advice there. But let's shift gears here about the promise of mentorship, because that's something that's so interesting. We actually talked about that a little bit off camera, of how sometimes, right, the worst advice we get is from people who are in the most powerful places. But you mentioned in your book that your dad gave you some great books that you laughed and said you thought he wrote, right? Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world, stuff like that you thought your dad wrote, but you couldn't find any mentorship from anyone really other than him. So take us through that, and then how you flipped, because you're a wonderful mentor to so many, and I know many are grateful for your insight. So how did that shift? Like, how did you go from, hey, nobody's mentoring me, I wrote to 1,000 people and they basically ignored me, to now being a beautiful, wonderful mentor?
Well, that's nice of you. Yeah, my dad gave me all these books when I was a kid. I mean, I don't remember, maybe I was 11 or 12. He sits down on the bed and he goes, son, school's not going too well for you. You need to read these books and you'll succeed. And it was like, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, like ridiculously challenging self-help books. I could barely get through Spot the Dog at the point, And so he just said, if you can learn these books, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino, and you can live them, The Power of Positivity by Norman Vincent Peale, and if you can internalize them, it'll make a difference in your life. So he mentored me in that way and many other ways. And as I started to succeed in life, and I wanted to become a performer in Las Vegas, I started to reach out to the real big celebrities, people that I admired, that I wanted to be like, find out how they did it in their career. Because I had read stories that, the great celebrities had mentored those that I was reaching out to. So I was like, oh, if they're getting mentored, I should be mentored by them. And they had nothing to do with me. So I made a promise to myself that if I ever made it to any kind of level of any success whatsoever, that I'd be a mentor to those reaching out as well. And unfortunately, after a while, Phil, and you know this, we went through this together because of so many requests I was receiving. for mentoring. I finally had to put an online course together just to say, here's a majority of the answers you need, and if you need help after you take that, then let's talk again, you know. And so eventually it became so much I just didn't have time to talk to everybody. And then maybe I started to feel like what those, you know, those guys that I had reached out to originally must have felt. I don't know, but I know that for me, making the promise to say to every single person that ever comes to me and says, can you help me with this, or can I ask you this question, I always say, hey, let's talk it through. If I can make the time, I will for you. And that promise is a very easy one to keep, because I was mentored then by people like Chris Polis that I talk about, and Tony Ingle that I talk about, and that changed my whole life in that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. At some point, right? I think creating a course for people to answer the fundamentals before you have to get specific, I think is a great way to keep that promise. Because if 100 people ask a question, well, let's put something together, right? That's a lot of the reason why I do my podcasting and why I write articles too, so that I can help people that way and answer different questions that I'm faced with, and get to share smart folks like you, Jason, that do that. But one of the things that's hard for some mentors and not for others is the fact that you have to mentor even when they surpass you. Steve Farber wrote a book called Greater Than Yourself, where he mentored, Tommy Spalding. That's all about this. So how does your ego handle the fact that, frankly, I would bet there's probably maybe one of your mentees that probably has surpassed you, but you're so talented. So how does that feel, man? How do you handle that kind of ego check? It's like, whoa, hey, they kind of took one of my things here. What's up?
Oh yeah, there's no greater compliment than to see somebody you've mentored all of a sudden taking it to another level. And that's happened to me most recently in the last 3 or 4 years, watching some of my peers just blast right on by, and they become more famous, charge higher fees and get them. Even while I'm still like, can I have a coupon to Blockbuster, for a gig? Even though they're like, it's out of business, I'll take it, And so, so as we mentor others and watch them stand on our shoulders, that really makes you excited. I was talking to one of them the other day, and I just said, I am so proud of you. I'm so impressed with what you've done. I feel like you've left me behind, but you're still reaching back to say thank you and hello, and as they become more famous, they have to not share their phone number anymore, and they don't have time for everything. And so as I've been on that end as well, watching the people that mentored me see me go by them, and they just keep going, you got this, man, I'm proud of you, dude, go. That's where I've learned it, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so cool. So yeah, that can be hard, but it is also super duper rewarding, because as we watch people succeed, we're just like, yeah, hopefully they remember me when they get that free Blockbuster coupon. I'm with you. I'm with you, buddy. So that's cool. So as we're kind of getting to a close here, Jason, I got a couple more topics here. One is, you talk about your promise to God as G-O-D, that reminder there, that if we think about those 3 letters, G-O-D, we can really think about how we can keep our promises. So talk to us about that. And folks, this is not some religious thing. This is actually really interesting. So Jason, hit it. What you got?
Let's go into the book for a sec.
Uh-oh.
G.
Got the book.
G stands for gifts. What are your gifts? What are you willing to share with the world? God sent us here to find them. I believe that, and to share them. And I think that's going to be a part of our accountability to whether it's the God you believe in, or to the world that we're supposed to share. Anything that we don't share, we've cheated the world of something only we can share. So how are you using yours? And then, obedience. Make sure that you're obedient to being, the person that you should be. And whether that's living commandments that you have learned throughout your life, or whether that's just saying to yourself, I'm going to stick to this type of lifestyle, to this type of way. I know that I've got something of obedience that I can do every day in my business, with my family, and with myself. And then finally, there's the D is for discipleship. We see it okay? Yeah. Discipleship. Whether that means you follow a belief system, or you are a disciple to the people that teach you, and you go, I want to be like that. How much are you learning? How much are you sharing? And at the same time, discipleship is also discipline. What is your willingness to be disciplined in that which you are a disciple? And so that's where the God piece comes in. A lot of people are like, "Is this a religious chapter?" I've gotten a lot of emails like that since the book launched. I saw the chapter on God. What are you talking about? And I'm like, actually, it's a little different than you might think, but it's mostly about your gifts, being obedient to share them, and where's your discipleship?
Yeah. Read the book. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's really good, man. So, all right. So as we think about this, right, as we kind of wrap it up here, you talked about, the promise of the one, that sometimes sharing is funny. It can be vulnerable, can kind of hurt us a little bit. People will blast at us. And sometimes we have to blast out beyond our signature move and branch out, be a flower cannon, if you will, instead of just a cannon of one. You talked about journaling, and you said something from Nietzsche that was really good. The problem with making a promise that we forget we did it. I thought that was really, really powerful. We talked about perception and the promise, about some property line living, about the promise of sharing our gifts, being obedient, and having some discipleship. Well, that leads us to legacy, Jason. And I'm curious, as we wrap this up here, what are you hopeful that your legacy is to the rest of the world? Because I'll tell you what I think it is after you share yours, man.
Oh man, that's a nice question. I mean, I talk about the importance of the legacy in considering the concept of being at your own funeral. What are they going to say about you? And can you write your obituary now? As far as a legacy for me, I would love to be considered a person that was, was kind, like, and I like the word Christ-like, just because that's where I like to go with it. But I know that if I can be a person that spread joy, that was present with each person at the time when I was talking with them, and leaving something of significance for others to consider how to live their talents, then that, I hope, is my legacy, and that's what I'm working towards. So I don't know, Phil, that's a big loaded question. You put me on the spot there, dude.
Of course I did, man. That's what I do, right? So, but I would say, Jason, you're absolutely living that. I'd also say that your humorous way of helping lift us all up is super helpful. And that's going to be a big legacy for you as well, because you help us all see the kindness in others and the goodness in others. And that's a big charge, man. And I can tell you, every time I encounter you, I always leave feeling better. And that's a really big deal, man. So thank you for that, brother. I really, really appreciate you for all of that. And that's really big. If you're not familiar with Jason, you can check out jasonhewlett.com. Get a copy of the book, of course. Really good. So we've got a couple fan notes here. Ben Lichtenwaller, who Ben often chimes in here. Good to see you again, Ben. He says, I really appreciate Jason's commitment to positive character, family, and transparency. Keep it up, bro. And I totally agree. I think that's really, really important, right? You have to do that. Jeff Shoup, he talks about still think about defining moments. Yeah, think about your signature moves and those defining moments for sure, Jeff. So, Jason, I'm going to give you the last word, though, brother. If there's something that you want to share with people as they want to get started on their journey to keeping the promise to the one, what would that be?
Well, I would say that in making sure that you create something that you're proud of, that you're happy about. Let me pull this up here so you see that. I'm so proud of this book. There it is. It's mirrored. I'm so proud of this book. And just so you know, this book was percolating inside of me for a long time. And it wasn't until I made the promise to actually sit down and write it and crank it out, because I couldn't set little goals every day to sit and write. It just wasn't working for me. I had to come up with my own way. And so as you come up with that method or that system to make it so that you can live your promise, so that you can each day go to bed and say, I am fulfilled, I am living my purpose, I'm happy with what I'm doing in my life. That's why this book was written, so that it gives you a guide as to some of the different topics, whether it's habits or self-acceptance or character or kindness, that you can actually put into practice immediately. It's very simple. They're very simple exercises, but it will change your life. And so that's what this book is about. It's just about putting into action what you've been thinking for a long time. and not just making a promise, but keeping one.
Wow. That's fantastic, Jason. So beautiful, beautiful insight there. Things we can do each and every day. Start journaling, get a copy of The Promise to the One, spend some time with Jason. Go to jasonhewlett.com. Get to know the man who lives his promise each and every day. Thanks, brother. I love you, man. Thanks for being here.
Love you too, brother. Thank you.
My pleasure.